let's talk for a minute about how you can make this breezy mesh summer top. Before we get into it, I just want to let you know that this is not a tutorial in like the traditional top-down, start to finish step-by-step process. This is going to be more of a guide or a template for a couple of reasons. The first reason being that this is a top that is 100% customizable to you in your proportions and your preferences. The second reason has a little more to do with perfectionism, and I'm just going to spend a quick minute on that and then we'll get right into the top. So if you want to fast forward, definitely go ahead. I've got a video on my channel I did a little while ago about how perfectionism really can steal the joy and stop you from doing a lot of things. And that's what was starting to happen. Not with the top, but with the video. Let me explain. I know from my prior experience, making tutorials isn't my type of filming. I really admire people who can make tutorials. It's not something that comes easy to me, and I haven't invested in the right gear or like the right setup to have like a nice bright white area and desk to film in. Those things were already kind of in my mind that I knew, and as time was going on, and I made several of these tops, they came out great every time, but I've really struggled with being able to express my thoughts in like a linear manner. I'm kind of like all over the place. I even enlisted the help of a trusted friend to go over the pattern I had written, and it was really just instructions. And you know, as a very experienced crocheter, she was able to figure it out, but it just really wasn't at the level that it needs to be like a pattern. That kind of set me back a little bit, and I did remember something I heard once, and I think it might have been from Gary Vaynerchuk, but I'm not sure, because I think a lot of us focus on the things that are wrong or the things we're not good at and try to make those better. And we can spend an enormous amount of time focusing on those to have, you know, only a small improvement. Where, again, I think it was Gary had said the fact of, you know, if you put that same amount of energy that you're putting into your flaws, to see minimal improvement, if you put that same amount of energy into the things that you're pretty good at, you're going to be amazing at those things. So while I'm definitely not in any position to say I'm amazing at other types of videos, I feel like it's easier for me to improve on the other aspects of video making than it is the tutorial portion. Yeah, if you like a real structured top-down video, this probably isn't the one for you. I'm sure there are a bunch of tutorials out there that will take you through step by step on how to make a very similar like shrug, bolero, poncho, cover up. Any of those words would probably work if you're searching for it. This is going to be more of a template and instruction. So I filmed some footage of like the different steps as I was going along making the tutorial. So what I'm going to do is kind of just walk you through step by step, since I just struggled so much at writing it down. And I'm also going to put in that footage as it correlates to what I'm talking about. So to make this particular shrug right here, I'm going to go ahead and stand up. It is cropped. You can kind of see it goes, it's a little more than 3/4 length. I hope you can see that. And I used Super Saver stripes in latte stripes. So this is the smaller one. It's not the jumbo. It's 235 yards, and I used 2 of them for me. Now, I am 5'4", and I usually wear like a size 14 or 16. And I've got a fairly short torso. I also like pairing my skirts. Like I like them to come up higher on my waist just because of my proportions. So I found that going with more of a crop seems to work a little bit better because it kind of like fakes me a waistline, if that makes sense. This is definitely cropped. And you heard my proportions. So like I said, about 500 yards of the latte stripe to do this one. I made one in black with some random discontinued black Joann's yarn, and I don't even know how much I used because it wasn't a full skein. And then I made one for my daughter, which you'll see in the clips, out of this Baby Bee Sweet Delight in gingerbread. And this is a 3 weight, and each skein has 377 yards, and I used 2 of these, and it was down to the wire. I was playing yarn chicken with this. My daughter's proportions are different. She's quite a bit taller than me, and so her wingspan is much longer than mine, and she didn't want cropped. Like, we did definitely more of one that would fit her on the waist, so it was quite a bit larger. It also depends, you know, for this particular one, I used a 6.5 hook with this 4 weight yarn because I wanted it to be drapey. I didn't want it to be stiff like a lot of times value yarns can be. And then with hers, I didn't. I used a 5.5 millimeter crochet hook on that. Again, those are all factors that are going to come into play, but I would say for this project, you probably need a minimum of 500 yards if you are you know, doing a cropped. I mean, if you were making this for, you know, like a teen or adolescent that's real tiny, you could do a lot less, especially if it was a cropped one. So just take that all into consideration when you're thinking about your size, the proportion you want it, the length you want it, and everything. This top is all done in one piece. It is one panel. It makes it super easy, and it's all identical. There will be the neck hole in the middle, which I'll cover how to make that, but the front and the back are completely identical. The other thing I would suggest is, I noticed with this one, as I went on, my tension was definitely getting a little looser. I can kind of see like one side is just like marginally larger than the other. I would suggest then, like, you could put a little marker or just something in there, or just if you can look at it and see, and maybe make that the front, because most of us, our fronts are a little bit bigger than the backs. So something to take into consideration, like if you find your tension is getting larger, especially on the second half of it, that's fine. Don't sweat it. Just make that the front of it and give yourself a little more room to accommodate. What you're going to want to do before you start is take a couple measurements. And I'm going to be honest, it is hard to get the wingspan measurement on your own without a friend. I was kind of just chaining, and then I was holding it out. I'm going to move over this way and kind of holding it like this. So it was like about wrist level, and holding it, you know, completely out. But that was stretching the chain. So when I let go, you know, my chain ended up, you know, mid forearm on both sides because it wasn't stretched out. So probably if you have someone that can measure your wingspan and get it exactly where you want it to hit, that would be the best. When I said I sent it to a trusted friend and she did hers, I know she kind of had the same problem with doing her measurement, and it was the sleeves were a little shorter than she wanted. So she actually, once she was done with the whole piece, just added a couple extra rounds around the whole thing. And she sent me the pictures, and it turned out beautiful. You would think it was planned that way. So that's also an option. And I did that on this black one where I didn't do the mesh, but I just went around in the single crochet. That is another way to do it, and you can do that anyway if you just want a little more structured look to it. I felt like, you know, it might be a little bit more flowy and soft this way, where this did have a little bit more dramatic look, and maybe partly because it's black. So yes, you can definitely add on by going around the outside. Just make sure that you're adding like 3 extra stitches in the corners, just to keep it like a nice corner when you fold it and everything like that. So yeah, it can definitely be elongated. It will make both the sleeves and the length a little bit longer if you go ahead and choose to do it that way. Measure your wingspan, and then you want to measure from basically the top of your shoulders to wherever you want it to hit on you. But go ahead and measure how long you want it. And you're just going to want to write that measurement down because as you're going along, based on the hook you choose, the yarn weight you've chosen, and your tension is all going to dictate how many rows from the bottom up that you will be doing. So go ahead and start with your chain. You want to get it to the length that you've predetermined and go just a little bit over that because we are going to use a few for our first stitch. Go ahead and make your chain. It can be any length, but it does need to be an even number. That's the only thing you need to do. Just make it an even number. When you've got your even number, you're going to want to double crochet into the 6th stitch from the hook, and you're creating that very first square. So it's basically giving you the bottom of the mesh, the double crochet, the top of the mesh, and then going down into the side. Then you do a chain, then a double crochet and chain, double crochet and chain, and you do that all the way till you get to the end of your foundation chain. If you find that you've messed up and you don't have enough or you have an extra, quick go back and just make sure that you didn't mess up your count, like by not adding a chain in there. I did that several times and had to go back because I realized I didn't have a chain stitch in between my 2 double crochets. And it's not the end of the world if you don't, because there was a couple times it happened in here, and when I caught it, I was too far along that I didn't go back, and you can't tell. But I think in the beginning, it's good to really make sure that everything is, lining up there. So once you're down there, if you find that it is wonky, I would just fudge it a little bit because no one's really going to know, and it is going to be down, it'll be like down in here in the sleeve. So you're not really going to see it. And so just either like go into the last stitch or just leave it hanging and then take the extra one, and when you're weaving your ends, just kind of weave it in a little bit more. Don't stress out about it. Don't take the whole thing out and do it again. It's really not that worth it. I promise. So once you've got that first row done of your double crochets and chains, go ahead and chain 4. And we're not going to go into, we're not counting that chain stitch and where it came out of. And then we're going to go ahead and we're going to skip that next chain stitch right there. And we're going to go into that. So basically it's like that third. I guess I don't really know how to explain that because to me, I don't really count where your chain comes from as the first one, but some people would. So to them, it would be like the third, and to other people, it would be the second. So, but you're wanting your chain, then you're wanting the one, your turning chain, and then you're wanting the 1 stitch right there for the bottom of the mesh, and then go into that next stitch with your double crochet. And you just continue that of the double crochets and chains till you get to the very end. So every row is going to be the exact same. You want all of your stitches lining up right on top of each other. And that's how you get that mesh look, is having them lined up. So it's not alternating. It is one post on top of the next post all the way up. If you do notice yours has gone astray and is a little wonky, that's probably a clue you need to check back and make sure that you didn't put, 2 posts in stitches next to each other, or forget a chain, or add an extra chain or something like that. So you want to just continue that. On this one that's longer, I believe I had 28 rows to get to the center point. And I think this one might have only been 17 or something. I don't remember now. Again, that's all just preference as you go along. So yeah, just keep at that. It can get a little tedious because they are easy stitches, which does make this a nice project for a beginner. Then once you get up to that midpoint where you want to do the neckline, it doesn't get tricky, but this is where it does get a little bit different. What I recommend you do is to lay your piece out on a flat surface, and we're going to want to create a neck hole. And it makes it easy because you've got the little grids, so you can really kind of see where you're at. I believe I did about 16 posts, so that would be double the amount of stitches, but about 16 posts for the neck hole opening. And I just put, well, I use clothespins, but I'm sure, you know, if you have something nicer, stitch markers or whatever type of clips, you know, just grab those. But I kind of figured out like how many I thought would be good and tried to center it a little bit. You want it to be symmetrical, so you need the same amount from the neck hole to the end of the sleeve on each side. So it's in thirds, but it's not a symmetrical thirds because the middle third is going to be the smallest width. Hopefully that makes sense. So I put the pins in. I did actually get out my calculator to do a little math to kind of see where a good starting point would be of thirds, you know, and then obviously knowing I needed to make it smaller in the middle, and just made adjustments to see where, you know, where it would work the best for me. Now at this point, we are going to mix it up just a little bit. Since you've done your turning chain, instead of putting 4 on your turning chain, you're just going to do 2, and you are going to single crochet from the edge, the side of it, until you get to where that neck hole is going to be. And I left my clips in just because I know I need as much assistance as possible. So I went ahead and did my single crochet, and then when you get here to the neck hole, you need to know how many stitches you have. So that wouldn't just be the post, that would be the stitches in the chain. And if for me it was 32, it could be different for you, like I said, based on your proportions and the yarn and the hook you chose. But what you do then is you go ahead and you chain 32, just chain them, so it'll look a little strange, and then go ahead and single crochet right into that other side, right after you've clipped and marked it off, and then go ahead and single crochet down the next sleeve. And then you are officially on the second side of it. But again, it's all one big panel at this point. So as you're doing it, you know, it's going to look like basically a big square or rectangle, but that neck hole will, you know, you'll be going on top or going up from the neck hole. So when you get down to the end of the sleeve, go ahead and put 4 on your turning chain. And we're going to go ahead and just continue just like we did in the beginning, where you are putting the chain, the double crochet, chain, double crochet, and it should line up again. So take a little extra time. You can see my seam right here down the middle and how it is symmetrical on both sides of that. So take your time and get over here to where your chain is. Take your time, be mindful of where you're putting it, but if for some reason it's not lining up perfectly, don't worry too much about it if it isn't like an obvious thing, because it is the neck. It's not going to be an area where like it's big and in the front, and if it doesn't line up perfectly, it's going to, you know, it would be obvious or anything. So just do your best, but don't sweat it. But then you go ahead and you start doing those double crochet and chain spaces into that loose chain that's hanging there, and go ahead and bring it back in on this side, and then continue as planned going down this arm. And then it will be identical to the other, and you just keep going until you get that exact same amount of rows in the front and the back. Like I said, this part can get a little bit tedious, but it's just a nice project to do. It's easy, and you could do this out of so many different types of yarns. The ones I did choose were all acrylics, but cotton would be really, really nice, like in like the heat of summer. Once you get both panels the identical amount of rows in it, you're going to want to fold it in half and make sure that it is, you know, pretty symmetrical. So at this point, I do think it's best to try it on. And it can be a little bit tricky again. And this is kind of silly footage we took. My daughter did not want to be on camera, and I respect her for that. So she took the footage of me trying on her sweater. So after we got done demonstrating it, I did actually have her try it on, and we fit it to fit her. But I went ahead, put it on, got it as even as I could. This part doesn't matter a lot. This part is really much more of a guide. So get it on and kind of decide where you want it to be, like how much room you want in that waist, because making the waist and the sleeves is, you know, what gives you like the cool drape of the sleeves here. And you know, this is like a breezy summer top, so I did want it to be like loose and flowy, where you could definitely bring this in tighter and make it more snug if you want to, if you have a tiny waist, or you know, or if you just want it more snug. If this is too loose for you, definitely bring it in more. But I just kind of put the clips where it felt good on my body, as far as how loose it would be, how easy it would be to get over my shoulders and my chest and get it on. Take it off and then go ahead and lie it out flat. And chances are when you put the clips in, because you're trying to clip them together, the front and the back, but chances are when you're doing your mock-up for it, it won't be even. So like, we're not putting them in there to be like our finished project. That is just a guide. So lay it out flat, count, kind of see how you did, see how even you got it. And we're going to try to get it as best to those spots, but we want it to be symmetrical. So I just kind of counted, see where I was at, and straightened it out and got the same amount on both sides of it. So go ahead and put my clips in. And this section, this opening, chances are is going to be a lot larger than the neck opening. So there really wasn't as much to go on the sides here. And at this point, you are almost done. You can do this last step in two different ways. I did it both ways. For this one, I actually did a single crochet with my crochet hook and just single crocheted along the bottom. I did a yarn needle and just sewed it. So it's entirely up to you. Obviously doing it with the crochet hook is going to give you a big seam, where this one, the seam is indistinguishable. You don't really notice it at all. I do feel like if you're wanting a tiny bit more structure to it, then putting the seam in will add just a smidge more weight down there and kind of, you know, help pull it down and give that bottom sleeve just a little more structure to it, where this is very, very flowy and soft and drapey. So that is personal preference, what you like to work with and what the effect you want. But you literally just sew from, you know, the end, your sleeve edge to the portion where your waist goes. Tie it off and weave in your ends, and the same way. So those two should be symmetrical. And then if you did the crochet seam, and probably also if you sewed it, go ahead and turn it, you know, right side out or inside out, even though this doesn't have a right and a wrong side. That seam kind of gives you one. And you are done, and you have yourself a breezy summer top. I hope you enjoyed this. I am really glad I just went ahead and filmed it, and I know it is not perfect, and if you have questions, please feel free to ask me down in the comments, so that if anybody else has questions, you know, they can read the comments as well and see if it's the same thing. Or if this is just something that sparks your creativity and you go off and find someone else's structured tutorial, I will not be offended by that either. But I just didn't want that feeling of perfectionism stopping me from sharing something that I was pretty excited about. I hope you enjoy it too, and thank you for giving me this opportunity to talk about yarn and fun tops with you. Bye!